the GAA being for everybody is the most important part. It doesn't matter where you're from, what your capacity is, whether you're good, bad or indifferent at it.
We can understand the power a role model has on young kids.
If you can't see it, you can't be it.
Sport has no barriers. You're all just playing with the same common goal, to enjoy and have fun.
Thanks very much for coming today. It's great to be here with SuperValu to discuss LGBTQ+ issues in the GAA, and it's 2023 and it's only 8 years on since, I suppose, I was stopped wearing a rainbow wristband in Croke Park just before the marriage equality referendum. And it's nice to be here with some of you today just to mark how far we've come in those 8 years and to see that we're now celebrating LGBTQ+ people within the GAA and how far they've come. So we might just have a little bit of a discussion around maybe what's your own experience of LGBTQ+ within the GAA, or have you come across it, or what you might think the issues around the culture is at the moment. Padraig, do you want to start off?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing, you're absolutely right. It's come on a long, long way. I would have had, open to admit, very, very little education, information in regards to the community in earlier years. And I'm sure as you kind of grow up, it's improved vastly. But in regards to experience in the GAA, very, very little, if any. You know, in any of the dressing rooms I've been in, we haven't had any member of the LGBTQ+ community come out anyway, or anybody that's been open about it. But like, as I suppose I've said before, like if there were to be a member in any of our dressing rooms, they'd be met with nothing but joy and happiness. Like, everybody is open, and like, people are people, and there's no, you know, there's no negativity towards it anyway, definitely in my experience with any of the lads I've been on teams with.
And that might be a point we just touch on, in that it's hugely different experience for males in elite sport and females in elite sport, because it's quite commonplace for females in elite sport to come out, be that rugby, inter-county football or camogie.
Yeah, we can't forget that. I think women in sport have had this struggle, but maybe it's 10, 15 years ago, you know. If I was to speak to Gemma O'Connor or Aoife Murray about how their experiences coming out into a Cork Camogie team are much different than my experiences coming out, you know, and maybe that's a lot down to how far we've come as a country, as a nation, as a community. But, you know, I think it's important to note that the struggles were there, but maybe the women's game is just 10 years, we're 10 years ahead of it now.
And I don't think a female dressing room would be any different to a male dressing room, any more supportive or any less supportive of an LGBTQ+ person who comes out. I think they both experience now, 10 years down the line, the same type of support. I certainly experienced it with my referee colleagues, albeit it was something new for them and something they needed to learn about and learn about the language around it, and we'll touch on that later. But there would be support within the dressing rooms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely from our side anyway, I wouldn't see anything but support.
Oh, and I just wonder, because obviously myself and Orlagh have only been in female dressing rooms, and as I said, there's been nothing but love, just nothing but support, or not batting an eyelid in many cases. Like,
It changes
as long
nothing,
as
essentially,
you know,
like,
it
yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, if I come into the dressing room with a girlfriend, if I come into the dressing room with a boyfriend, not come in with them literally.
I don't think you're allowed to go at that crap.
It's like.
Who cares?
Exactly,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and that's why when I think about why there hasn't been a similar progression in men's, that's a big question for me, is the dressing room. And I suppose, Padraig, you've touched on that there wouldn't be any issues, you know.
I can only speak from personal experience. I just don't see it as an issue. Maybe that's the values I hold, but from, like, I've been in plenty of dressing rooms, I know the guys really, really well, and no, absolutely not. I couldn't see any issues arising, like.
Yeah, and we talk about the values, Padraig, and you mentioned the dressing room there as well. There's this maybe irrational fear that there's potentially going to be a difficult culture within a male dressing room, that it might be a little bit homophobic, or that it's a macho sense. And I certainly don't get that sense from going around inter-county matches and meeting the players. Obviously, I'm not in your dressing room, but it doesn't come across as that. And the values are really important. I think there's good, strong values within GAA teams. And those values and behaviour set the culture. So I would imagine around most inter-county teams there's a good culture of acceptance.
I think so. Like, if I were to go back maybe 10 years when I first entered into senior dressing rooms, be that club or whatever, maybe it would have been a bit different then. There was kind of an older generation that maybe had slightly different values to us, but like, definitely I'm actually on the older end of the dressing room now, and the boys below me are far more informed, and like I think the values are certainly there, that we care for everybody, no matter sexuality, ethnicity. It's all irrelevant at the end of the day. We're there to enjoy each other's company. We're mates, and like there would of course be banter. Like they talk about men's or dressing room banter as it's a negative. Like, look, it's a way of communication. When lads are together, they're a certain way. When women are together, they're a certain way. There's no doubt about that. But like, if somebody was to come out, for argument's sake, hypothetically, like, they might have to put up with a bit of banter and a bit of crack, but that would be, again, I get that for wearing the wrong pair of shoes to train in, or somebody turns up. It doesn't matter. If you do something, you're getting a bit of banter for it, and that's just part of the nature of it.
And I would have found that when I came out, even just in the club dressing room when I was playing at home at Slane and with the intercounty referees, there was kind of just a bedding in period where the other referees or players tried to, the banter, as you call it, just gauge what was acceptable, what wasn't acceptable. And as you said, if it was the music I was listening to, or the boots I wore, or the hairstyle, there's a bit of banter no matter what. And it's all in good jest because there was no malice behind it, and they were just finding the right balance. And I find that with the referees, particularly because we're such a close cohort now, that they've got the balance right. They've got the balance right, and it's good to be able to interact with them and let them have a cut at you and a jibe, but it's not at my expense personally. It's just something funny they see.
And can I ask David, in that instance, was there any time where someone took it too far or actually offended you? Is there any examples?
I would say, there was one occasion when someone just took it too far,
right.
And it was just, look, that's not really okay. That's not funny. And I think they were shocked straight away when they realised, oh God, maybe I've said something here to offend them. But it wasn't me getting back at them or trying to make them feel worse or belittle them. It was just like, that one's just a little bit too far. And it is an education piece, because I could say something in a dressing room that I might feel funny that someone else is going to be offended by, because everyone has different life experiences, they come from different backgrounds. So it's just trying to find the balance. But, sometimes when something like that does happen, holding the hands up and saying, oh, I got that one wrong, okay, that's great learning curve for me.
And in terms of, like, say, coming out and maybe the build up to that, was it more like, the fear of not being accepted, or like were you...
There was a couple of different fears. Like, I had two comings out, a very private one and a very public one, and I suppose the public one was a little bit more difficult, but it is that fear in terms of the GAA that there's going to be difficulties within the dressing room. The lads won't accept you the way they have done before, particularly around showering and changing. What's their perception of what you're thinking, and what's your perception of what they're thinking. And what you really find is there's no difference whatsoever. Everything just rolls on the way it normally does. You're there to play football the same way you always have. And we might talk a little bit about how we might change that then in clubs, because it's not always the dressing room that people are coming out. Like, the clubs are there's a wide variety of people exist within a GA club outside of the dressing room. Like, how do you drive that change for LGBT people in the community, in the club?
I might just give a good example. In my own club, I had a GA club in East Cork. So it was 2020, year of COVID. There was nothing much going on. We were doing nothing. I think club football came back first before intercounty.
That's right.
So I was living in Cork City. My girlfriend was living with me at the time. She played a bit of club football back in Kildare. Had nothing else to do. Was like, look, is it really bad if I go club training with you? I was like, no one will say nothing. And then she's a very good footballer, so she was starting our senior team, and suddenly they're asking questions, the old men on the sideline, who's this new girl, number 15 from Kildare? And then they're like, oh, that's Hannah Looney's. And it did start, that's Hannah Looney's friend. And then we got to, oh no, that's Hannah Looney's girlfriend. And you just had that conversation, and it was suddenly acceptable. And, the old men who couldn't quite hack that this was my girlfriend, not my friend, were accepting that. And I think it bridged a huge gap. Of course, all the girls never had an issue. But just to see that older generation, took them that bit longer to accept it, but... That's
probably a societal thing as well, how maybe it wasn't as accepted, back then, whereas now we're more open to discussion as well. But, I think by even having, I always kind of say, like, having one good person or one good adult to turn to, regardless, and having that, like, social outlet and that social support there, that within a club, within, whether it's in school, where could be your coach, it could be your player, your team player, it could be whoever that you feel comfortable with, just having that, creating that kind of safe environment where you're allowed to express, you know, how you feel, and you're allowed to be open, and you're allowed to communicate as well. And actually, by just doing something simple like encouraging players, you know, coaches to have that kind of one good adult or one good person model that they can turn to somebody if they're, you know, feeling down, or if they want to come out, or if they have issues or concerns as well. So sometimes it's just something simple like that. That costs nothing.
No, it's like having that, you know, a children's officer, diversity inclusion officer in the club, or a role model in your own club that you're able to turn to for a positive experience. And I think what you've said is really important also, Anna, in that, you know, the age profile is much more difficult for older people, because younger people are so much more exposed to the language around LGBTQ+. It's partially becoming the norm, whereas the older people in society that might need a little bit of a help or an understanding. Not that they're closed off to it, they're moving with Ireland. And if Ireland has moved on, the GAA has moved on with it. You know, so it's helping them to learn. And an awful lot of older people within the GAA would have been people who were unable to come out. They could be the people who maybe married themselves to the GAA because the GAA was their family. You know, they could be hanging the nets or lining the pitch because that's where their love came from, because they were never allowed express love. They might be lifelong treasures of clubs, and it's hard for them then to see how open and free young people are within. You know, there's small changes that can be made within clubs, and as you said, diversity inclusion officer or a positive role model. How else are we going to roll that out, though, you know, within clubs, to make sure everybody gets a positive experience in relation to LGBTQ? Anyone any ideas?
$1 million question.
Yeah.
Just going to touch, maybe I think it's covered, but I suppose it's bridging the gap, I think, is the big thing that we're just discussing, because, like you said, GAA clubs are just traditional. Let's not beat around the bush here. They're very, very traditional. The inter-county scene might be a bit more progressive, but your traditional GAA is very traditional. So how do we bring everyone along with us, I guess? Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
And that's why this campaign is so important, that there's going to be visibility. And visibility at inter-county level tends to trickle down into the clubs. So we have our Rainbow Laces campaign with Super Value, which is fantastic that they're launching that. But simple things like a pride flag being flown in a club during the month of June is such a simple, visible, tangible experience for a young person going into a club and seeing that and knowing that it's okay to be who I am. But not only that, we need to turn the conversation then to the allies in the club, the people who are not part of the LGBTQ plus community, because I'm part of the 10%, you know, and I'm okay with being openly gay. It's getting the other 90% that are now silent on this issue to come in and support us.
It's very difficult, and I think anyone talk about it again is language. That is the minefield, really. If I was to think, and I'm somewhat well informed, and maybe not of the oldest generation, maybe that kind of middle generation, and even I still find it difficult. We work with the LGBTQ plus community throughout my different roles in the community, so it's not like I'm not informed, but I still find it an absolute minefield in regards to language. There's a huge fear of mine saying the wrong thing, putting it in the wrong context. I might want to support something online, on social media. I would personally avoid it upon the fear of scrutiny, of saying the wrong thing, coming across the wrong way, supporting one, not supporting the other. If you want to have more people like myself or other people that aren't part of the LGBTQ plus community support the community, I think we need to find a way to bridge that language barrier, because that's the one that's definitely restricting people from doing more and being a bit more open about trying to be supportive.
So you're saying it's a little bit around educating people around what is the type of language that should be used, or the type of language that offends or needs to be avoided. You know, it's a really difficult one because you know, you don't want to offend. It's not coming from a place of malice, but sometimes you might say the wrong thing and then the ally feels bad because they're not as well informed and they feel that they've offended someone from the community then, and maybe they're shy to touch on that again because they don't want to upset anyone. So I think education plays a huge part in it.
Yeah.
And the GAA does have education schemes out there to support this. Definitely,
and I wonder, is there a lot we can take from, you know, there's a lot of big corporations now are doing really good D&I campaigns. I suppose just an example from me in work. So I'm trying better to be a trans ally. There's a lot a lot in that, and I'm trying my best to educate myself. But you know, a simple thing I was doing was just having my pronouns under my name and a meeting, and then that difficult conversation came up. That older generation were like, Hannah, why is there she, her next to your name? And then kind of on this big meeting with 20, 30 people trying to explain that I'm just trying to be an ally here, you know. So, you know, little things like, little initiatives like that.
Small steps. Yeah, to get even people thinking and questioning and opening, having that open conversation as well.
Yeah.
What can we do then to help those allies feel a little bit more comfortable in, and I love the saying that, you know, if everyone comes into my world, then nobody needs to come out. So it's to get those allies into our world to help them to understand us so we don't need to come out. What do you think would be small things that we could do to help those allies? Because we need to help them. It's on, like, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. I need to put out my hand and offer help. You know, so what do we do to help those allies is a big question.
I think it's just, my opinion would be just keep talking about it. Keep asking the questions, what can I do to help? And reflecting on things you've done. Could I do X, Y, and Z better?
Schools as well, I think, maybe having that link. I know the GAA have such a strong link with schools that perhaps it could be linked in that way at a younger generation, so that it's the norm for them growing up. You know, sometimes you have to take a step back, take a step forward, and you have to, you know, focus on the youth side of things and education there, and maybe change their paradigms, you know, around it as well. So.
Yeah, because we know from studies that, like, homophobia is most prevalent in second level schools with the youth of the country. They seem to get through primary fine, it's not an issue. Second level becomes an issue, and then at third level it doesn't seem to become an issue at all. It seems to filter out, and it's trying to get into that age group of 12 to 18-year-olds to change their mindset. But like that, change the mindset of the allies in the room as well as the young people who want to come out and be themselves.
Maybe even some more research as well on the area, actually going into the schools and asking, you know, getting opinions, getting insights. Those findings would help to, I suppose, you know, maybe perhaps focus on the educational side of it, or deliver initiatives, campaigns, programs. It's understanding, you know, I suppose, the thoughts and the insights around it as well.
There's a great campaign in secondary schools. It's Stand Up Week, and it's fantastic when you see it. And it's a call for people to stand up and call out transphobic or homophobic or biphobic bullying, and that if not to be a bystander, but to be an upstander, you know, and to call out types of homophobic bullying and language. And it's trying to check yourself and say, hang on, that's not language I actually should use. But also, if it is used, it's up to other people around us, allies, to call it out and say, hang on, like, there's another way of putting that, or don't say that, that's not okay anymore. You know, and it's educating people in language. Is there more the GAA can be doing?
That's what I was going to ask you, actually. I was just coming from, say, my perspective. If I was to ask you, what can senior intercounty players do? Like, you know, is there a step? Is there something, if I ask you now, you know, one change you'd like me to make as a player? Is there anything as an ally could do? Is there anything, how can we best support? Because I genuinely don't, I want to support the community. I want to be an ally, but how do we best do that? How does anybody do that?
I suppose the simple thing, like being involved in this campaign for you, not every intercounty player is going to get involved in a campaign like this. It's fantastic to have someone who people can look up to, who's a very high profile person within the association. But then I suppose outside of that, and in a smaller setting, what can you do to become a better ally? So you'd have to challenge yourself around the type of atmosphere that is created in your dressing room. How are you contributing to that, and how are you creating a safe enough space for other people to feel comfortable within themselves? So again, checking your language, wearing the rainbow laces. I thought it was fantastic last year when the GPA held a Pride brunch in Dublin City for Pride, and it was supported by a number of straight intercounty football players from all codes, female and male, and that was lovely to see. You know, high profile GAA athletes coming and walking or starting the walk in Pride. That was something really wonderful for people from my community to see, that allies who are, you know, put on such a pedestal in this country within the GAA came to our event and supported us and said, look, this is something that we're totally fine with, and we just want to, you know, put our shoulder here behind the wheel and say, this is something we're okay with. They're the small things. But if there is someone that you know might be struggling with coming out, or that has already come out, that you're not afraid to ask them, you know, where are you at the weekend? Are you seeing anyone? You know, are you going on any dates? What's happening in your life? That you're not afraid to have that conversation just because they're gay, because you don't want to hear that they were out having a drink with another fella at the weekend. You know, that you just normalise it. And they're the simple things that can happen, not just in GA, but in a lot of I suppose, areas of society, that we have those conversations and that they become the norm. Okay, so we've already spoken about the number of high-profile female athletes, not only in the GA but worldwide, that have come out. But if I was to challenge you here to name 5 openly gay male athletes in the world of sport, how many would you be able to name? I'd say you'd struggle to get the same on 5 fingers. Yeah? We'd probably struggle. We might do Nigel Owens in rugby and Gareth Thomas, maybe Tom Daly. Some of you might know the recent Czech soccer player that's come out, but like, I mean, we're struggling already, and we're talking about world sport, male world sport. And then we turn to the GAA and to rugby and to soccer in this country. 64 inter-county teams, 4 provincial teams, 10 League of Ireland teams. We've nobody. Why is that? Why in 64 inter-county hurling and football teams have we nobody that has come out as openly gay in elite sport?
Yeah, I have an opinion. It could be totally wrong, but something that I've been thinking about on this is, like, us as women, we have a lot to be battling. Like, coming out as gay is probably could be down on the bottom of my list in many cases. And I just wonder, again, I'm not a male, and this is just my opinion from looking at the GAA. Are we a bit too concerned what people think? Do we hold a lot more pride, not even pride, but just, do we care too much what people think because I'm a male inter-county GAA player and I must be strong and I must be...
The persona, like a certain persona to fit in almost.
Maybe,
like,
and as I said, like, women, we just have so much other things to battle with, that I can just come out comfortably because I need to worry about playing in Parky Queeve next weekend rather than than that. I don't know, that's just a view I hold, but maybe you can touch on that, Paul, if I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, I'm conscious of having a view because I can't speak from experience, you know, and that's, it shouldn't be me speaking. In the same sense, like, I get where you're coming from to some degree. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, a gay footballer.
Absolutely.
Without, there's no if but or maybe about that.
In every panel, probably, Paul.
Probably.
You
know?
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Like, I think we can accept that. There's maybe no facts, but we're going to stick with it. I think it's very much like who will open the floodgate. Like, and it takes huge bravery. It's very easy to go and do something. Well, it's a lot easier, to do something that somebody's done before. If you want to climb Everest and nobody's ever done it, you're not going to do it. But when you have somebody to go and look at it and go, how did you do it? How did it go? What were the troubles? You know, it's very much the same thing, you know. That's why role models are so important, to be able to look and go, the guy down the street done X, or a girl from my club has done this. I believe now I can do that. Like, that's how we work as humans. So
that role model piece can be quite difficult, because maybe you're coming out and you don't want to be a role model. You just want to, live your life and be comfortable with your sexuality. But you're thrown into a role model scenario, and sometimes you have to take it on, whether you like it or not, and that can be scary. Maybe that fear is there as well for inter-county players. But as you said, they're definitely there. It's just going to take for someone to open the floodgates, and it will be, I think, floodgates when it does happen.
And if you look at the women's game, that it does seem like we're 10, 15 years down the line. But as I mentioned, it took the likes of Valerie Mulcahy to come out. You had in Cork, I had Valerie as a role model, I had Aoife Murray as a role model, Gemma O'Connor, and they had their own battles. So
Valerie was a huge part of why we were able to walk in pride as a group within the GA in 2019. And there was a sense from speaking to Valerie, and I would say the same, that after coming out, there was a great sense of self-confidence that comes with self-acceptance. And I would say that I referee better since 2019 than I did before, because I felt included in the GA, that I felt part of it. And I think that's why this campaign is so important, that if we get people to self-accept who they are, that they're only going to grow as people and become more self-confident. And you put that into an inter-county perspective. Imagine being a closeted, gay inter-county player, and all the weight and pressure and stress and what you're dealing with in the background, how could you possibly go out and perform at your highest level when all that is going on in the background?
Yeah, completely agree with you, apart from the fact that you could become a better referee since 2019. Not 100% sure on that. But yeah, of course, that would be a horrific burden to be carrying. Like, I'd hate to think that I'm going training tonight. I would hate to think there's one of my peers and one of my mates in that dressing room carrying that around with them. It's much like somebody, not being able to speak about a mental health issue. We don't want that. We're all here to support each other, and that's just the nature of the GAA in general. And like, for somebody to have to hold back their feelings on the fear that they might be scrutinised for it, it's not great. It's a horrible feeling to think that way, that there might be somebody in our dressing room, and I hope there's not.
I think as an ally, Padraig, that is the nicest message that you could possibly send, and it resonates with me, because my greatest regret was that I didn't give my friends the opportunity to support me, and to hear you sit there as an inter-county player saying, if you are struggling with this is not something you need to be worried about. We as allies are going to support you, and I think that's a lovely message to send to everyone around in the GAA.
Yeah. And again, I think credit where credit's due in the GAA. Well, for me personally, I've had a very positive coming out experience, and the GAA, regardless of my sexuality, has always been a place where I can just be myself. When I was coming out, the first people I told were my teammates, and we just got on with it and got over it. So, as I said, credit where credit's due. The GAA for me has been the brilliant environment all the time. So it's like, how can we keep improving it? That it's not just that it's every person has that experience, the same experience that I have with the GAA. It would be a goal of mine,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Raising awareness around homophobia within the GAA and calling out the language can be quite difficult. I know from a referee's point of view, if a player is going to say something to another player, he's not going to say it in earshot of the referee, for fear of, we have a rule to use homophobic or racist or anti-inclusion language as a red card offence. But certainly players aren't going to be saying it in earshot of me, because they know exactly the consequence that's going to arise out of it. How then on a pitch or in the GAA environment do we actually call out those types of homophobic language when it does happen?
It's a good question. And fortunately, never heard it, and long may that last. Hopefully we'll go the whole career without ever having issues like that. I just haven't seen it, haven't noticed it. I don't think it'd be met very well. I really don't. I think if I, for example, said something like that, I think my teammates alone would let me know about it afterwards. I think I would fall out of favour with all of them, So I think that would be really the way to deal with it. Would be, you should be assumed, like, there are values in a team and in a setup, and like, to break them values is to lose trust in the group, and you obviously you don't want to. The group is your family, So I think it would be that everybody knows that that's a core value of a team. And that it's just completely unacceptable. And it's kind of a given. It's not even. I don't even think it's ever been mentioned, but I think it's a kind of unwritten rule nearly in our group anyway.
Yeah, and we're sitting in lofty heights talking about inter-county football, and I suppose it's a rule I've never had to use at inter-county level. But down at club level, it might be a little bit different. And you spoke about how traditional the club setup can be, and maybe it might be more prevalent at club level than it is at inter-county level. I don't know. I've never heard it, so I've had no experience of it. But as Padraig said, it's not acceptable.
Yeah, I have been in environments and just where people have said things, not even homophobia, but just racist comments, let's say, and I haven't called that person out on it.
I think it's just nipping it in the bud and saying it is not acceptable.
And we're all talking about football matches or hurling matches, camogie ladies football, and we haven't touched on spectators, because that's where I really feel that the language comes in, and that's where the abuse comes in, and the racism and the homophobia, that someone gets so invested in a game that we're calm and controlled, we know our job and we know what we have to do on the pitch, but someone who loses the run of themselves and then says something maybe they don't mean, and it comes from outside, that's a difficult one to call out. That's really difficult, because it's not on the pitch. We've no control over it. So how do we deal with that one?
And I suppose that probably goes back to, again, campaigns like this.
Yes.
Visibility, awareness, education. Probably the key points behind it all at the end of the day, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're still always going to have one. Do you know what I mean?
There'll always
No
be
matter,
one.
there'll never, it will, you know, we can't have the rose-tinted glasses on and say everything we saw. It's not going to happen. Like, no matter
Control
what
the
issue is.
controllables.
It's always going to. There's always going to be one. You know, even at underage, it's horrific. There, you hear a parent. Like I made a rule with myself as a parent. I said whatever. But when I go to my kids' games, I don't say anything. I just made a zero tolerance rule because I knew if I never said anything, I never say anything wrong. Because you do get caught up in the heat of things. Emotion can run a charge, and all of a sudden you're shouting at a child. You know, who knows? I've seen it. You know, and we've all seen it. And like, no, unfortunately, people are going to be in the stands and they're going to say things they shouldn't say. I don't think there's a whole pile we can do about it, bar hope that these campaigns lessen the amount of people that are in the stands saying them things.
Did you ever think we would see a day when we will be sitting here promoting rainbow laces as part of a GAA campaign?
No, and you know, it's just it's phenomenal to just be having this support and to be highlighting the importance of pride and the importance of getting behind the LGBTQ plus community and diversity and inclusion as a whole, you know. So
even just the visibility, like even, you know, the bright colours, people actually wearing them and all that all makes a difference, and it normalises things, and you know, the acceptance and all that as well. So it's fantastic.
It's brilliant. It's a brilliant marriage of two community-based organisations in that Pride is community-based and SuperValu is community-based, and it's great to see them come together and promote something like this that we would never have promoted before within the GAA. And it's great that they're going to roll out this campaign for the month of June, but that they're putting their weight behind it. They're doing something tangible, because far too often we see D&I campaigns and they just come out and for the week of Pride, you know, they'll change their logo or they'll do something small to market. But this is a really good campaign that SuperValu are saying, no, we really want to make a difference here, and we're going to give back to a charity in doing so.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, from personal experience, remember being involved in Cork Ladies football, something that was always really special to me is that the girls in the month of June, we'd have a Pride training session and everyone would wear
all
their
the
colours.
colours,
We'd have a crack, we'd get a picture, and it's just, you just really, I'm myself here and everyone has my back, and there's something so powerful about this.
It's a small step, but it'll actually knowing that like your team, your club, your parents, that they all have your back as well in it. And you know, if you can't see it, you can't be it. Like there's meaning behind that as well, because essentially the visibility of it as well and the normalising of it too. And
like coming out isn't easy regardless of the environment. So if you're a young person, as you said, maybe thinking differently, thinking there's something different about me, and you're going down to your team and they're all wearing rainbow laces, that you're like, no one cares here. Everyone's going to have my back anyway. So it might just make that coming out experience that bit easier for that person down the line, you know.
It's a small step, but it'll actually make such a big difference as well.
And seeing the allies in the club wearing them would be such a powerful message.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So thanks Hannah, Orlagh and Padraig for coming in today. It's been wonderful to chat about LGBTQ plus advocacy and allies within the GAA. It's certainly something I would never have thought that we would have gotten to this place within the GAA, but I'm so happy to say that we are now here. So thanks very much for being here.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.